bottom wall, and the only one standing.
The Great Pyramid of Giza covers 13 acres. It's a very remarkable building. The precision of this building exceeds anything that we require of builders today. For instance, the area over 13 acres was leveled within 1/7 of an inch. That's about the thickness of a thumbnail. The casing stones are joined line to line to within 10,000ths of an inch, and the joints are filled with some kind of mysterious cement that nobody's been able to figure out what the formula is. This is not the work of primitive people who have copper chisels.
Inside the Great Pyramid are a number of fascinating chambers and corridors, like the Grand Gallery, this towering stairway that goes up into the so-called King's Chamber.
Mainstream scholars theorize that the Great Pyramid was built as a tomb for the pharaoh Khufu, who reigned from 2589 to 2566 BC. But archaeologists have yet to find any human remains or authentic grave markers within the structure. The design of the tunnel system and the chamber rooms within the Great Pyramid have convinced engineering expert Chris Dunn that the true purpose of the massive structure was to act as a power plant, distributing energy through obelisks.
We're taught in school that the Great Pyramid is a tomb, but if you look at the complexity of these buildings, the precision with which they were built, the features that you see on the inside, these various shafts and passageways, for me it looks like a machine.
With more than 50 years of experience in the aerospace industry, Dunn believes that chemical reactions took place within the Great Pyramid that generated electromagnetic waves.
You have two shafts leading into the Queen's Chamber, and these shafts delivered the chemicals to the chamber that they would mix and boil up hydrogen, and then the hydrogen would pass through another passageway to the Grand Gallery and then into the King's Chambers.
Dunn speculates that once the hydrogen gas reached the King's Chamber, vibrations energized and converted the hydrogen atoms into microwaves.
You have evidence to support the theory that hydrogen was being fed down the northern shaft, which leads to the King's Chamber, and then it enters the chamber and collects the energy that has accumulated in that chamber, and then directs it through the southern shaft for the microwaves to spread out. So that energy would reach large distances. And I think if you had an obelisk at any distance, it could actually affect that particular structure.
The Great Pyramid is itself a power generator, and that energy is broadcast from the pyramid. It's picked up by the transmitters, which are the obelisks, placed at key sites, made of red granite that are able to be tuned to the specific frequencies coming from the pyramid.
Could it be true, as some researchers and experts like Chris Dunn believe, that the Great Pyramid of Giza was actually a power plant, and that obelisks were used as receiver towers designed to distribute the generated power? While such a sensational notion may sound like science fiction, Egypt's pyramids and obelisks serve as inspiration for the first person to wirelessly transmit electricity in the modern world, Nikola Tesla. When engineering expert Chris Dunn first presented his theory that the Great Pyramid was used to generate electricity in his 1998 book, The Giza Power Plant, it ignited a firestorm of controversy. But he was not the first to propose this audacious notion. A century earlier, in the 1890s, Nikola Tesla, the famed engineer and inventor of the first alternating current motor and power system, studied the ancient structures of Egypt while working to develop a system for transmitting electricity without the use of wires.
Tesla studied the ancient Egyptians. He was fascinated by the ancients and their understanding that quartz produced electrical frequencies. He thought that they understood what quartz was all about. Tesla used crystals, he used quartz, and all of that can be found in the ancient obelisks.
According to Kriston's theory, chemical reactions took place inside the Great Pyramid to create microwave energy and transmit it to the obelisks through the air. But Tesla believed the ancient Egyptians may have instead been amplifying the natural energy currents present in the Earth. In 1898, he began building an electrical tower in Colorado Springs based on this hypothesis, and 3 years later announced that he had succeeded in creating the modern world's first wireless energy transmitter.
It's really interesting to me that when Nikola Tesla was putting together his Colorado experiments, he was getting information from an expedition that J.P. Morgan was paying for in Egypt. And he was getting information about the size of the pyramids and the obelisks, and Tesla was talking about using these towers to send power that he takes from the Earth around the world to people wirelessly. It was a large tower that has a gray conductor on top of it, and then a large conducting pipe that went way deep into the granite basin underneath it. It was grounding his system into the Earth, electrically connecting it to the Earth. And then he would tune this system until it reached a certain frequency.
He drives the energy into the ground. He then put light bulbs all along the mountains, and all these light bulbs lit. That was his proof that he could send electrical energy through a wireless system.
After the success of his initial experiment, Tesla began devising a much more ambitious plan for wirelessly transmitting electricity. In March of 1901, after relocating to Long Island, New York, Tesla began construction on a nearly 200-foot tall structure known as Wardenclyffe Tower. The larger structure would allow him to generate more energy to send into the Earth.
Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower was supposed to be his crowning achievement, a lasting monument that would generate energy and send energy over hundreds of miles. Tesla thought he could energize entire cities. Unfortunately, it was never tested because he ran out of money.
Although Nikola Tesla was unable to realize his grand vision for wirelessly transmitting energy with Wardenclyffe Tower, is it possible that he was on the brink of recreating a technology that the ancient Egyptians possessed nearly 4,000 years before him?
Tesla's original designs for the Wardenclyffe Tower was to be the same height as the King's Pyramid in Giza. I find it really interesting. Was he thinking that the ancient Egyptians were actually sending power, collecting it from the Earth somehow, and transmitting it with these obelisks? If Nikola Tesla was onto something like that, perhaps that was what the ancient Egyptians were doing.
But if Egypt's obelisks were designed to conduct energy, the question remains, what purpose did this serve? Was it to create a source of electricity for the community? Or could the power of the obelisks have served an otherworldly purpose? Perhaps clues can be found at the Temple of Edfu, which contains thousands of hieroglyphs detailing the customs and mythology of ancient Egypt. According to the so-called Edfu texts, a 160-foot tall obelisk once stood at the Sun Temple of Abu Ghorab in Memphis, where the people could commune with the gods.
According to the ancient Egyptian building texts from Edfu, Abu Ghorab was known as the place of the gods. And what's so interesting is that most mainstream Egyptologists are actually saying that we know it as a place where the ancients connected with divine energies.
The obelisk itself was the point of contact between humans and the gods. We communicated with the gods through that stone.
I think it's quite possible that where you find these obelisks were places of communion or communication with the sky gods, with extraterrestrials.
Could it be that the obelisks were alien communication devices, allowing the ancient Egyptians to make contact with their extraterrestrial gods? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and suggest further evidence can be found by examining the story of Egypt's most famous son, the prophet Moses. Cairo, Egypt. Roughly 20 miles northeast of the Giza pyramids and the Sphinx is a site that was of great significance to the ancient Egyptians. The sacred city of Heliopolis. Here, at the site of a 70-foot tall obelisk, the pharaohs were said to commune with a council of 9 gods called the Ennead, who brought technology and knowledge to mankind.
One of the oldest obelisks we have today is one that was of a pair of obelisks that stood in Heliopolis, the city of the sun god Ra, so close to Cairo today. In Heliopolis, the pharaoh of Egypt would have to consult with the 9 gods, the Ennead, with every aspect in life to make sure he is doing the right thing. Every ancient Egyptian would have their full trust that anything coming out from the mouth of the king is the word of the 9 gods, and the obelisk is there to receive the messages and deliver it to its people.
So once more, we have the idea of the obelisk associated with communication with some kind of higher intelligence.
What makes Heliopolis of particular interest to ancient astronaut theorists is the fact that it is associated with a famous biblical figure who also created a device for communicating with the heavens, the prophet Moses. According to the book of Exodus, Moses was born in Egypt to Hebrew parents, who set him afloat on the Nile in a reed basket to save him from an edict calling for the death of all newborn Hebrew males. Found by the Pharaoh's daughter, he was raised in the Egyptian court and educated in Heliopolis.
We know from the Bible that Moses was raised in the house of Pharaoh. He was raised amongst the priests of the Egyptian religion. They had knowledge of the ancient wisdoms and the ancient technologies. Moses learned many of these things from them. So years later, when God speaks to Moses and commands Moses to bring the children of Israel out of Egypt, Moses brought with him many of these secrets.
In the book of Exodus, Moses frees the Israelites from enslavement and leads them out of Egypt.
The Israelites were taken out into the wilderness of Sinai, and they came to Mount Sinai itself, and Moses went up the top of the mountain and he saw Yahweh in the form of an incredibly bright light. And during this time, God gives him the 10 Commandments. But what he also does is give him the instructions on how to make the Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant is described in the Bible as the sacred wood box that would hold